Call the meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to join us. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Gehrig. Grinberg.
Here.
Pepcorn.
Here.
Strand.
Here.
Mahoney.
Here. Well, Tony, the fire guys are getting more and more educated. Fire Inspector Investigator Doug Nelson recently received a Certified Fire Marshal accreditation through the International Code Council. He joins Fire Marshal Ryan Erickson and Inspector Investigator Don Stolenwerk as members of the Fargo Fire Department to reach this level of certification. So it looks like they're all getting educated, huh, Chief? Chief does rappel well, I'll just tell you that. He was prepared to save me, but Health. Fargo Cass Public Health has received a $180,000 grant from the North Dakota Department of Human Services Behavioral Health Division to address opioid abuse and overdose deaths. The grant will support the Mayor's Blue Ribbon Commission on Addiction's coordinated response to opioid crisis and will be used to a variety of interventions, including increased availability and use of naloxone and the increased access to medical assisted treatment. John Strand and I were talking about that, and we have a methadone clinic in town, and that has filled rather rapidly. And we also have a lot of use of Narcan in the community. We seem to having a lot more people that are saved or taken care of. And this money will be used again to help out different methods, and the team will meet and tell what we're going to go forward in that. The team at the Health Resources and Services Administration recently completed a site visit for Fargo Cass Public Health Ryan White program, which assists individuals from North Dakota living with HIV or AIDS. There were many positive comments from the Human Resources the HRSA staff, including the number of services available and the quality of the support their clients receive from the public health staff. Kudos to our public health team as well. Now, this is an interesting statistic. You'd never think about this, the amount of people live in Fargo. But more than 1,600 children participated in the library summer reading program, where they completed more than 17,000 hours of reading, and more than 406 adults participate in this program this summer. That's a lot of reading, a lot of people. It's really great to have the library reaching out. Now, this is a good one for any of you with children. Tony, you'd like this. The solar eclipse viewing party will be held on Monday, August 21st at the Carlson Library, starting at 10 a.m. Kids of all ages are invited to celebrate with snacks, crafts, and other activities. Safe eclipse viewing glasses will be available while supplies last. And remember, don't look into the sun because it can cause blindness, so something people might want to take in mind. Planning. We always get concerned how much the city is growing. The city has issued permits for $195 million in construction during the first 7 months of this year, which is lower than the first half of 7 months in 2016, when the money was $256 million in permits were approved. Well, less than last year, this is still much higher than the average year. City departments are reviewing building permit requests for $235 million in construction going forward in the fall. The large projects in review include $15 million NDSU Foundation Housing Project, a $32 million NDSU Resident Hall, an $18 million Mid-America Still Facility, and a $32 million Border States Electric Headquarters. So there is some things in the queue this year that might fill out more of our construction. Normally we run about 250 to 300 million a year. The Sanford project brought our building permits to 1 billion at one time. And we probably will run between 350 and 400 this year. So that still is a robust construction. Single-family housing construction starts are lower with 199 units this year compared to 258 units during the same period last year. Multifamily housing is about the same with 420 models versus 444 units last year. Residential remodeling is still moving along, $12 million, about the same as last year. And we're getting a lot of applications for the Gate City loans, in which people can rehab their homes. We still have a robust amount of people applying for that. The new commercial value of this year is $29 million compared to $39 million a year ago. Commercial remodeling is $36 million this year compared to $42 million last year. And there have been a lower value in public buildings with $15 million this year compared to $36 million last year. So overall, it looks like we're going to have a good season for construction, although it might be down a bit than more from last year. Order of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda, moving item 18 from the consent agenda to the regular agenda and adding an extra item at the regular agenda to consider the final balancing change order number 5 for Improvement District BR 16B1?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Passes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of July 31, 2017 regular meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Consent item, agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 37, excluding item 18, which has been moved to the regular agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Garrick?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Regular agenda, we're starting with item 38. Commissioner Pepcorn would like to discuss approval process for programs like F5 project. Commissioner Pepcorn?
Yeah, I'm just would like to have the staff update us on what exactly went on with this approval process. I'm not familiar. It didn't come in front of us, I don't believe. And so I would just like an explanation of what went on. In the past, we had a group home proposed near the Unicorn Park. It was a while ago. The mayor and I were on the commission at that time. And so that happened in the past, and I believe this is the same type of thing, just in a different form. And so if somebody from the planning or whoever, the thing that concerns me is we should have police involved, because it's obviously former convicts, and so there's a safety issue. And so if someone could come up and explain, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Nicole, is that yours? You received an email, I think, that stimulated this conversation?
Correct. I think we all, hopefully we all got the email, but I got one. Basically, it was a resident that was concerned that they were not following the regulations as they should, and so that was kind of what instigated it. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, so this came to our attention about a week and a half ago, where our office received a complaint email. And so we had not heard of the F5 project before, or their entity. And so our staff reached out to them to find out who they are and what they're doing. So they came into our office to meet and talk about what they're doing. Aaron Nelson in our office and Dan Molly kind of talked to their group to let them know that these are the codes they need to follow. They were informed of the codes they need to follow, and we're going to get back to us. Since then, we're now in the process of communicating with them on coming into compliance. Our last communication with the owner was they plan to come in with compliance in the codes that are here today. Under group, we have back in 2010 with that previous case, we had our code actually talks about group living, restricted residency, and so we brought those to his attention, and he intends to come in full compliance with those.
No, at the time we brought this up before, I was concerned of how many people are in one apartment or one area, I think, when we originally brought this up. And there was a good question about a number of how many people in this program could be in one area. And is that what the ordinance addresses?
Maybe I'll just toss it to Eric real quick.
Sure, yes. So as Nicole indicated back in 2010 when we were dealing with that prior incident, as a result of that, we amended the Land Development Code to create this separate use category called Group Living Restricted Residency, applying to kind of group living where people have been, a number of people, 4 or more, have been convicted of a felony, and they don't otherwise meet the definition of sort of household living, family living type of thing. And so when somebody has a group of that size in a household, then in order for them to be in compliance with the code, there's a conditional use permit process that requires then notice to the neighbors, typical type of notice published in the newspaper, and then a hearing in front of the city planning commission, ultimately appealable to the city commission. So that's the process for approval on the restricted residency, the convicted felon type of situation.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Pepcorn.
did they not follow what they should have followed then, or
Correct. They did not consult with us to get a permit to do a conditional, to get a conditional use permit.
So to me, it's very serious, and I do think this, you have to follow our processes, and the main thing is, just from the standpoint of parks, schools, daycares, to make sure, we don't know where they are, and then just from this perspective of law enforcement, recidivism, we have to know where those people are. I mean, so anyway, there's many concerns. We went through this before, and I realize everybody wasn't here, but I mean, so are you telling us, Nicole, they're gonna come back through now?
Yeah,
And
so
what's
our-
gonna happen in the meantime? That's the other question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not in our normal code violation process, when we get a complaint, we work with the inspections office and file a code warning, if you will, and say, this has come to our attention, we ask that you come to our office and talk about this. And we haven't gone through that formal notification because we first wanted to learn more about what they're doing. In their past communications with us, they said, thank you for letting us know about these codes. We intend to come into compliance, and what we understand for that to be is they will actually not fall into the group living category where they would actually need an application. But they now know that if they are gonna go into in that range, that they need to come and apply.
So they'll be coming in compliance with our ordinance.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
but we'll follow up with them and keep communications with them.
Mr. Gehring?
The conditional use permit, they have to come to the city commission to get that done.
To the planning commission,
Only the planning commission.
correct.
Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor, and all this said, it's important we acknowledge the crisis that's facing the addiction community in our town, and getting jobs, getting housing is absolutely an almost impossible hurdle for many people to accomplish, to get back out into a structured life. So I hope in our conversations that we aren't just looking at tightening up and squeezing, but we look at the realities of the needs and maybe modify and open up policy discussions and actions that will lead us to accommodate more people, because frankly, incarceration is not the best answer for somebody recovering and rehabilitating from an addiction. And I believe you're correct that we all need to keep tabs on this, but I hope that's where this goes, is that we take this as an opportunity to provide more help to more people, because they're all members of our community and families.
Mr. Chairman, can I add
Mr.
something?
Peppercorn?
These are convicted criminals. These aren't victims. And some of them could be sex offenders, murderers. We have no idea. And so they're not victims. They have consequences for their actions. And I totally agree, the drug thing is one thing, but we have no idea who these people are, and we don't know where they live. There's 5 of these houses in Fargo right now that we had no idea. That's not right. And so I believe what happened was they circumvented what we had, and now we are not going to tolerate that. And it seems like Fargo is somehow, we're the ones that absorb everything. Why is that? Why is Fargo absorbing everything? That concerns me, and I think eventually the taxpayers are going to start looking around saying, what's the deal? Who's looking out for our safety? Because if I find out that one of these houses has a sex offender near my house, that would make me very, very upset. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Greenberg?
I would just like Chief Todd to comment on, this as we're all, understanding and following what's going on in our community and state. I think the headline yesterday was, the shift from first-time drug offenders in the state pen coming to the local jails, and our local jail is full, and to, the social media that gets it half right sometimes and not right at any time in some cases. I'd like just to have Chief Todd's perspective on this and what this situation was compared to, all aspects of crime.
I can't speak to the permitting and them not letting us as a city know about implementing this housing, because I'm not involved in that approval process for that. I will tell you that based on legislation that happened this last session, that there are going to be less and less acceptance of people out of the state penitentiary and pushing those prisoners back on the cities and counties. And so we're going to have to get creative on how to house people for some of the lower level offenses that perhaps they used to go to the state penitentiary for. So this will be a challenge for especially for the sheriff's department and for the courts that have to work with this. Now, I'm guessing that most of the people that are staying at these homes are probably on probation or parole through North Dakota Probation and Parole, and they're being tracked that way. If they are a sex offender, they have to notify us of where their residence going to be. And if they're a level 2 or level 3 sex offender, we do neighborhood notifications, letting people know that the sex offender is going to be living in that neighborhood. But yeah, we've got some challenges coming up here in the near future of housing people that are convicted of crimes. I don't know if we have all the answers to that, but part of the answer is trying to provide resources that help people come back into society, give them living skills, give them job skills, deal with their addictions issues, anger management issues, all of those things that are kind of falling back in law enforcement's lap that everybody expects law enforcement to take care of somehow, but that's one of the challenges, that we're going to have to partner with people to do that.
Mr. Grinberg.
So Chief, you have the law enforcement, whether it's county, city, we have the information that we know these things. Is there a gap in protection and safety that we don't know? And then that's a lead-on question. Do you have the tools to do this work and understand the ramifications to our community and region? Because if the answer to that is no, then we need to have some kind of a process to strengthen the ordinances.
Right. If a person is on probation or parole, I can go through North Dakota Probation and Parole to find out where they are residing. But if you picked a location for F5 and asked me who's residing there, I probably couldn't tell you that, unless it was a sex offender.
So this might mean that maybe we should get together, whoever commissioners want to work on that and figure out how this should run, because the reality is you wouldn't know where they're placed anywhere. They're supposed to be low-risk offenders, those types of things, but there's got to be better communication. So maybe there's a different way of doing this. I know it's a legislative body does want to start having more people out of prison into the community, but we need to figure out how we're going to handle it and get the support needed for
Let me
it.
jump in here. The legislative body, I was a member of the legislature for 22 years, and I was on the side that zero tolerance. You do a drug offense, you're going to jail. But I can tell you there's a lot of discussion across the state and the costs about the fact that, first-time drug offenders aren't a threat to society. So when the legislature eases up, they're talking about this type of an offense, not across the board. I just want that clarified. And there's a lot of folks in the community working on alternatives to incarceration and ideas, to Commissioner Strand's point. But, my underlying concern is, do you have the tools to do this job, to address Commissioner Pepcorn's, concerns? If the information isn't there, then we're going to have a process to understand that we do have the ordinances to enforce this.
Right.
And understand who's coming to our community.
I don't know that we completely have the tools to do that with these type of housing projects, because I don't know all the questions to ask right now, being that they haven't gone through this permitting process and really haven't communicated with us a lot on these projects.
Can I add
Mr.
one more thing
Pepcorn.
real quick? So we have the ordinances in place. They didn't follow them. That's the summary of this. So whatever they're doing, they should stop immediately until they come into compliance. I would say that's what should happen right now. It disturbs me greatly that this was going on. It was obviously done intentionally. And so we have to send the message as a city, you better stop what you're doing, come into compliance, or you're going to have more legal problems. But this is not first-time offenders. First-time offenders don't go to prison most of the time. These are serious criminals that have been in the state prison, and now they're being sent to Fargo, and we have no idea where these houses are. And they're supposed to be telling us. So obviously we have an issue. They'll come into compliance, or this program will stop.
Aside from this particular program, I think there are opportunities for both the sheriff's department and the police department to partner with other entities to get some of these programs going to help people return to society. I don't disagree with you one bit, Commissioner Pepcorn, that this seems to have been bypassed and that was the inappropriate thing to do. But overall, I think there's something that we need to recognize as a city, that there are things that we can partner with educational institutions there where we can help people return to society and also help with housing. So we're going to have to look at those.
Any other discussion? Thank you, Chief Dodd. Work in progress. We'll go to public hearings. Item 40, Osgood Town Site, 15th edition, 5050 47th Street South. Approval recommended by the Planning Commission on 7/6/17, continued from 7/31/17 regular meeting. Zoning change from a limited commercial to limited commercial with a planned unit development overlay. First reading of the rezoning ordinance and a planned unit development master plan use as well.
Yeah,
Nicole
in front of you
Crutchfield,
tonight
thank-
is, in front of you tonight is a zoning and planned unit development. Again, I think I might have mentioned this a couple weeks ago. Planned unit developments don't come in front of you very often, but I see as we get a little bit more detailed into site projects, these might come in front of you a little bit more often. I know the Planning Commission is seeing more of these routinely. And so this is an instance where the applicant wants to do a dog boarding facility. Our dog boarding facility, the way it's classified as a land use, has a separation requirement for residential housing. As you can see on the zoning map, there's multifamily to the north and single family to the west. And because of that separation requirement, they would not be allowed by right to do a dog boarding facility. But knowing that this is a residential neighborhood and people want a place to bring their dogs, we were able to work through planned unit development, a site-specific plan that would provide some extra screening and conditions related to that particular use. So that's the planned unit development piece. The Planning Commission did recommend approval, 8-0. The ordinance should be, a draft of the ordinance is in front of you as well. I'd be glad to walk through those conditions if you'd like, but it's pretty straightforward. This is a picture of the site plan, and staff kind of thinks of it as a win-win situation because as you can see, the WAPA lines, or utility lines, are going over the site in a kind of that triangle piece there. See my mouse here? And so the way they're laying out their site plan also works with the WAPA lines. And so again, staff is in support of this and be glad to answer any questions.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this zoning? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? Hearing none, we'll go to close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion, Commissioner Garrick?
I assume the owner of the apartments was notified of
Yes.
this. Now, do the people who live in that apartment have any say?
No, they don't really get notified as a renter, but we try to think of those things, and the planning unit development does give us an opportunity to think of the design elements in particular. So again, the additional landscaping of 29 trees, things like that are what we think would be a good buffer for those.
So for sound and smell and all those type of things, we think that those trees would make that work.
And yeah, and Nate is here if you have any specific questions to their operations, but yeah, we believe it'd be okay.
Do you want to ask the owner?
That's fine.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Number B, special assessment on sewer repairs. City Auditor Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Annually, usually about in August, we prepare our list of sewer assessments. Let me explain the sewer assistance policy a little bit. So with an emergency sewer repair with a homeowner, if their repair has to go all the way to the main and make a new connection at the sewer main, the city contributes to the cost of that to try to help the cost of digging in the street. For the part that's from the curb to behind the curb into the house, the city allows homeowners through a petition process to put this on special assessments over a period of 15 years. And that's the list that we have in front of you tonight. We usually have 100 to 120 of these a year. Total assessment that's going to be added is $560,000 this year.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in regards to the special assessments? Anybody who wishes to speak? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Question.
Mr. Garrick?
Is there a limit or a cap to how much we can assess them for this?
No, it's on a, where we kind of share with the cost as the sewers go deeper, the cost gets higher. Or if the sewer happens to be on a major arterial, they'll have road closure signage. And also another contributing factor is the road material. If it's made out of, if it's a concrete road surface versus asphalt, we find that the cost goes higher. This last year, I saw 3, I think, assessments that got in the $25,000, not the assessment part, but the cost of the repair, and then the city paid about 1/3 of that, and so the homeowners are facing a $15,000 assessment in those cases, so it can be substantial.
So Steve, if you have a beautiful tree in your front yard and it goes into your pipes, you don't have any homeowners insurance that covers that?
Not to my knowledge, you know, I haven't heard of a homeowner's insurance that will take care of that. They typically will help with the backup into the house if there's some damage there, but not with the cost of doing the repair.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Gehrig.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes. Aye. Item C, special assessment for nuisance abatement fees.
So annually, we get presented with a list of properties that didn't mow their property or remove the snow from their property. And we also extend that to Dutch elm disease trees on the, you know, the city takes care of the ones on the right of way and the boulevard, but homeowners are responsible for any trees that are in their property. And so we will remove those trees and then give them some time to pay for it, so we'll put it through an assessment process and do that also. If there's any
Is there anyone
questions.
present who wishes to speak regarding this special assessment? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Gehrig.
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item D, continuing to 9/25/17, it's special assessments for the maintenance of the Skyway system. Steve Bragg has asked us to continue this until 5:15 Monday, September 25th, 2017. Is there a motion?
I move to continue.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Strand.
Yes.
Gehrig.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. We'll go back to item 39, update on the Fargo project. I was driving out there, it looks like they're making some progress.
They are, and so I think the last time I was in front of you was about 2014 or 2015, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity to do a quick briefing, because on your consent agenda, you just approved the last phase of construction, and so we're pretty excited about that. And so just a quick overview for the audience and maybe for those that haven't been fully introduced to this. The Fargo project came about in 2010, 2011, when we were introduced to a national artist out of New York, Jackie Bruckner, who ended up striking up a relationship with Mayor Walker and Pat Zavarol and challenged her with, is there some multi-purpose use of these dry, sometimes wet detention basins that we use on a regular basis? And so through our work, we selected Rabanus Park as the pilot site. Rabanus Park is right at 42nd and 17th Avenue. Kind of kitty corner from West Acres Mall and that near the FM Visitor Center. And so this is through a long outreach and social engagement process, ended up with a design project that talks about innovating stormwater management, building capacities of local artists. We worked with 5 local artists besides Jackie from New York. And then talking about where are some of the gaps and roles of different agencies in our community on how to build multifunctional infrastructure. So this is a rendering that came out of a We Design workshop back in 2012 of over 200 participants on what this park could look like. We wouldn't be doing this work if we hadn't received the initial grant of our town back in 2011. We thought we had hit the jackpot at that time because it was also the crest of the flood when we were trying to go after this. And so we're a little focused on the flood protection, of course. But then when we received the Art Place grant of $450,000 to start the construction, and then we received the Outdoor Heritage Fund and the Kresge Foundation of $900,000. And so you might ask, what are we doing with all this money? And really what we came upon is this concept that's nationally recognized as creative placemaking. We had no idea we were doing creative placemaking, and we just kind of fell into this national model, which is basically working with community sectors, public-private partnerships, working with neighborhoods, and activating space with artists led. And so, lo and behold, we've become a national case model, case study, Trust for Public Land, the USDA, Forest Service. A lot of groups have picked us up as a case study and published our work. And it's all because we're working with design, social, ecology. We have 3 NDSU science projects going on down there about how to work with the different plants in the wet, dry. Just 2 weeks ago, we were saying it's too dry down there, and now it's a little too wet. And so how do you work with that vegetation to work in different environments? So for those that don't know where Rabanus Park is or have seen it in action, this is what it used to look like. There's a concrete low-flow channel. It gets full about 3 to 4 times a year. This is the watershed, the urban watershed that it controls. So you have the parking lots, you have all sorts of things that the engineers can talk about. This is a picture of Jackie Brickner on the far right. Unfortunately, in 2015, she passed away from lung cancer. And so we had to kind of reestablish we were just in that process of transitioning from that national, she used to, for those that got to meet Jackie, was a huge inspiration in our community. She came to town about every 6 weeks, worked with community groups, lived with Lynn Fundingsland and Kali and Icha. She kind of shared a room there. And so for very low cost, she spent a lot of her time in Fargo. And so, let's see. And so this was pictures of the 2012 event, what we call We Design, and working with many different groups, kids, nationalities that don't necessarily understand what a stormwater basin is. The artists built these sand models, and then we had a week-long engagement process in the warming hut there on how they could shape that space. Since then, we've worked with part of our work has been working with other groups to understand what programs they have and how can we capture onto those. Growing Together is a perfect example of that, who are doing work similar, and how can we build that capacity of activating the space. So these are, the listening garden is completed, and the water feature is completed, and what you just approved tonight was a grant or an award for the overlook feature in the natural play. So this is a little bit of our construction sequencing as it transitions, the drawings done by Land Elements and A2S. And so we'll have some natural trails in there, some gravel that are ADA accessible. These are the science experiments that are happening. So right now you'll see tall grasses and flowers and all sorts of improvements. This is what it used to look like. This is with the concrete removed. We learned in 2016, the best time to construct is in the winter when the water is frozen. And so, but it can get too cold. And so January is when we got a lot of our work done. This is the listening garden. It was modeled after a life-size marimba. And so these are logs that will be carved into saying different sayings and stuff. But there's also drums on the other side of this wood feature that children can play with. Here it is constructed. I'm still waiting for that last phase of vegetation. Children playing in it at the Welcoming Week event last summer, as we did a little bit of engaging there. The water features from last winter, so this is the inlet off of 42nd Avenue. This is what it looked like prior to construction, and then this is what it looks like today. And so this was working with the 5th grade class at West Fargo School. We did a mini We Design in 2015 in 2016 on natural play features. And so we had science teachers, the curriculum, 2-day working with the science and art teachers. This year with the Kresge dollars, part of the work we're doing is a summer series. Hopefully you've seen posters of that. And so the Sundays in July and August, This is the Plains Art event. They call it Buzz Lab, and it's basically high school students that are running an internship program and teaching younger kids about pollinators and bees and things like that. And so that's a life-size beehive that goes around mobily. That's a great event. And so all different groups have been activating that space, and we'll be doing surveys to find out how to make the space more engaging and working with the park district. And so this, my last slide is basically the construction phasing. This will be the overlook that comes off the warming hut and the natural trails that come in through the site. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Strand?
A simple question. Could you explain the name of the park and the history and how to say it?
Robanus?
Robanus? I just
Yeah, it's the Robanus
stumble on that
family.
one.
Yeah, it's the Robanus family that donated that space with the Schlossmans, and probably people that have a longer history in Fargo. I see Tony, Commissioner Grunberg nodding his head, but they basically worked that land and gifted that land with the Parks District.
They used to farm on the corner of 45th Street and 13th Avenue and sold a lot of their land, did well, and donated some land.
And it's the Robanus family. Okay, thank you.
It's good to have guys that are old enough to remember.
40 years in the Senate.
Item 41, the renewal of the Downtown Business Improvement District. Steve Sprague to explain.
It's kind of update night, I guess. We just thought that this would be a good time to update you on what's going on with the Downtown Business Improvement District, commonly known as the BID. The original BID was originated in 2012 and expires at the end of 2017. That BID, you know, through that process, we've set up the goals of clean, safe, maintain, and beautify. And they've been operating on a budget of, the original assessment was $220,000. And so I think with that money, they've been good stewards and gotten a lot done. Last year, just over a year ago, they entered into the contract with Block by Block. And so you see the guys out there that are cleaning or helping people or maybe enforcing ordinances, and they're wearing their blue shirts. And that's through the partnership with Block by Block that's helped us to do that. So we started working on the renewal of the bid about in December of last year in 2016, and we've had numerous meetings with the public, you know, done various scenarios, calculations on you know, how the assessment would look. The assessment originally was set up with it half being based on valuation and the other half being based on square footage. And so we kind of kept that same ratio and ended up, in order to maintain that dollar equality, we had to raise the assessment on the square footage by a half a penny and to kind of maintain that. And so what we're doing is looking at an assessment now of $340,000. So that basically speaks to the volume or the increase in the property valuations in the downtown area. So we did meet individually with any property owner whose assessment is going up by more than $1,000. Another thing to keep in mind too is that we've expanded the district a little bit. There originally was set up with 5 zones, and we're taking Zone 1, which originally was Broadway, and we're expanding a half a block to the east off of Broadway, so it's going to go over to 5th and go up and down 5th also. And then this Zone 2, we're expanding down to that 8th Street and along Main Avenue. So those are kind of the 2 changes as far as the expansion of the bid. So then tonight, there are a number of things when you look at the Century Code that are required, and tonight what I'm asking you to do is to approve the report of costs, which basically is detailing out the clean, safe, maintain, and then coming up with that total cost of $340,000. And also the resolution of necessity. This is a protestable project. The letters are being sent out this week, and then the property owners have 30 days to protest. It has a lower bar of a protest. It's a 30% protest rather than the 50% that we see on a construction project. So that's good to know. And then finally, we've been working hard with city staff. The original bid had a memorandum of understanding with city services that, like in-kind services that the city would provide. And it wasn't very detailed, and so we've been working to get a very detailed MOU, which is in your packet, and it's called Plans and Specs. And in there, it does list the departments and their department responsibility, property owner responsibility, and bid responsibility. So we've taken a lot of the things that were kind of questionable, whose responsibility is to do this, and assigned a person that would be the contact person for that responsibility. So I don't know if you have any other questions?
Any questions, Steve? Mr. Pepcorn?
Steve, so you talked about your meeting with some of the people. So I have a business down there. I'm in the bid and I'm on the bid thing, and it's a great thing. But from the perspective, did you have some people that were not happy or thought the increase is too much? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The first time we had the bid, we had certain properties in town that are more industrial in nature that are in the assessment district. And they, at least one of those is still kind of opposed to the bid. I guess they're not seeing a lot of value to them. But generally speaking, I think people were pretty supportive. That expansion of going a half block east, we saw some properties that saw a substantial increase. And for the most part, people are very supportive of it. One of the things that we did find through this, the Zone 3, which is kind of gets a little bit more into the buffer area of the bid, and they wanted to just make sure that they saw some activity in their sections. And so I think when we made them aware of some of the things that the bid can do with graffiti removal and doing some of the sweeping, they have these walk behind vacuums called billy goats, and they run those through those areas too. So it's just that sometimes the property owners aren't seeing some of the activity, but once we informed them of some of the things that were available to them, I think that they were more open to that. So
Thanks.
Mr. Gary?
Steve, is this 100% assessed, or is there a?
correct, 100% assessed. Well, the MOU spells out some city dollars that go in, but we have been meeting with the various department heads, and they have that in their budget, the amounts that the city is putting in.
What kind of dollars are we talking? Is it?
I believe it's
$1,000?
65,000.
Any other questions? Commissioner Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, I'm not sure this is on point or not, but I've had people ask me about what they perceive to be not enough recycling containers and programming downtown.
Good
Is that a
question.
bid responsibility, or is that a city or
Well, it's a
utility?
combination, and if I get a little off track, I see Terry is here, so maybe he can get me back on track. So when we originally had the recycling containers out, the recycling containers looked pretty much just like the garbage cans. And so the product that was going in was getting contaminated, and so they really didn't see use for that. So we took the garbage cans, or the recycle containers out. It's my understanding that they're being repainted into something that's going to identify them as recycling, and then they would go back out. And I don't know if Terry or Ben, do you? I'm not sure the timeline. About 3 weeks out from getting them back out.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Can I have a motion?
The assessment itself will come to you on September 25th. So it's potential that we would have, people that protest at that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seems like Bid's doing a good job downtown, doesn't it? Seems like keeping it clean pretty good. Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item 42, recommendation to appoint John Offit to the Arts and Culture Commission. You have my recommendation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did John show up, John?
Mayor, yes, John Offit, could you stand and just, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you join up with the Arts and Culture Commission. In
Can
case
we
you
give him
don't,
a round of applause? You've been very much part of our art community, John. We very much appreciate not only your work, but also your volunteering to help us on this commission. Thank you very much.
Are you going to teach Commissioner Strand how to blow glass? I see this in your resume here, glass blowers.
What, if I might add, Mayor and Commissioners, John, your resume here is not quite currently up to date because, for example, since then you've received the Governor's Arts Award. And if there's any artist, I would say, in North Dakota that's an ambassador for the state, it's John Offit. you travel, I'm not sure how many cities and locations and states with your mobile glass blowing unit, but you also educate and promote and network and market and connect. So I look forward to you, we all look forward to your contribution to this commission.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney,
Aye. State Water Commission request for cost reimbursement for FM diversion flood project costs, totaling $25,542, $46. Ken Costin to explain. Actually, you can explain them both if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. These are the monthly cost reimbursement requests for the State Water Commission funding for the flood projects. As requested by the commission, we've segregated the Oxbow amount. The one for $25,546 represents the Oxbow reimbursement, and the $751,091 represents projects within the city limits. So we'd ask for your approval of those two so we can move that money along.
Can I have any questions? Can I have a motion?
Move for approval. Item A.
There's a second. Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
No.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Move for approval. Item B.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Gehrig,
Yes.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Thank you. Hope the next one goes as well. Item 44, I recommend approval of the mayor's 2018 preliminary budget and set the public hearing date of September 11th, 2017. Since the time of my presentation to the commissioners, we have taken any recommended changes or advice from all the commissioners. The budget team has reviewed them, and I stand with the budget we have submitted to you. It's a difficult year to predict, but I think that state revenues are going to go down. Agriculture is getting hit hard in the western part of the state, but we've decreased our operating costs. The team has decreased expenses. We've kept tight on the budget. We've not added a lot of people. We've recognized our employees and what they offer, what they bring to us as a group and bring to the city. So my recommendation would be to approve it. Ken Costin to explain the steps we're going forward.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Mayor. The next step of the process actually is tonight to approve the preliminary budget. That's a statutory requirement under the North Dakota Century Code, Chapter 4040. And with that, we would be establishing the maximum mill levy tonight. So we'd ask for you to pass the budget that includes a 2 mill levy reduction. That's the current plan within the mayor's preliminary budget. And then what happens after that is we forward that information, the preliminary budget information, along with the recommended tax levy to the Cass County Auditor. And he prepares now a new consolidated notice of tax estimate for each property owner that will be sent out. It's under the new consolidation of tax reporting that the legislature will enact actually next year. So this is a trial run this year. We're going a year early, and we think we like this new process, and it'll give better information to the taxpayer. So with that, again, the mayor's preliminary budget is here. I did have a couple of comments on just a couple of things that were probably different this year that we haven't done in the past. And those of you that you've been involved in our discussion of our audits, once a year you get to go through that with Eide Bailey and to see how we're doing. In the recent past, our revenue projections are typically 1 to 3%. We end the year more revenue than what we projected. In the last 2 years, because of the decline in the state economy, our revenue projections are like right at almost a break-even point. So there isn't any surplus funds accruing in our revenue projections. That's unique to this last couple of years, and I want you to know that, because then what that leaves you to work with to balance the budget is on the expense side of the ledger. And fortunately, because of the weather and other acts of God, if you will, I think we've had mild seasons, and we have accrued typically a 2 to 3% underspend on the general fund side, as well as the efforts of management to control their costs as best they can. And so one thing we did insert into this budget was we anticipated that the departmental performance would replicate what it has in the past. Now that's stretching the buck a little more than we normally do, and that is about a $600,000 placeholder, and it presently shows up in your unallocated department. So in other words, what we're saying is we expect our departments to come in 1% to 2% under. And that, a portion of that savings is already incorporated into this preliminary budget. That, that can be controllable to a certain extent, but if Mother Nature throws a nasty fall and a lot of weather conditions, that can have some impact on our budgets as well. And then the other part is the idea of how we project our revenues. Commissioner Pepcorn had asked about that during the presentation. We pretty much have flatlined our revenue projections for the state aid. We've increased it slightly, but again, it is slight because of the economic forecast for the state. So, but I did want you to know a little bit about how we had put a placeholder in to reduce departmental budgets. Departments at this point are generally unaware of that, which may or may not be a bad thing or a good thing, but in the end, they've always come in under budget. At mid-year at this point, we're at about 4.5 or $4.7 million under budget in the general fund, but about half of that variance is related to capital projects or capital funding that is typically spent near the end of the year. So, you know, if everything holds, we might have the ability to come in slightly better than the way the numbers look. So I'd be happy to answer questions you have. If you have specific questions about the book or other comments for other staff, we have everybody here.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the suggested motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Commissioner Gary.
Yeah, so I'll be voting in favor of the preliminary budget. Biggest reason is because the maximum for the levy for the mills would be 51 then, and that's a really good start, and there's a lot to like in this budget. There are some areas that I'd like to cut around the edges and see if we can do a little better for the taxpayers on property taxes, and I'm going to put a proposal together and send it out to the commission as a whole for that. I won't belay it tonight, but it's all kind of shown on page 113, and by no means do you have to go there right now, but that's where the unallocated funds are. That's also where the COLA resides. And the COLA this year, I've asked the mayor to consider giving a 3% increase to the lower end employee, a 1% for the middle, and a 0% for the high. The reason for that is the COLA, in many regards, is a focused change to keep people who would otherwise might leave. We lose the lower end folks at a much higher rate than we lose people who make over $100,000, for example. So I think that if we're honest about what the COLA is doing and what the focus is of it, and we can focus on those lower folks, we can actually focus those monies where it would create the biggest bang, and it would actually cost less to do that. So the unallocated on page 113, the COLA is actually always also in there. And I think if we do those small things, we can have a greater impact on property taxes. We're not losing employees. We're not cutting anything that the mayor asked for. It's just those two areas, and I think we can make it happen.
Comments, discussion? And the only thing I did on the COLA adjustment is that the problem we have is that we have a pay plan that we've had for quite some time. Commissioner Pepcorn and I sit on the PEC committee, and we review all the pay scales throughout this. To the commissioners, what's going to happen in the next year, we're going to do a market survey of all the pay scale, what we pay through the city of Fargo, and address any issues that might be there, and that's an opportunity to change that. The trouble you have if you isolate different payments like this in the healthcare field, I saw it, and it was a disaster when we varied what we gave in cost of living. Secondary issue in the community, or in our employees right now, actually our healthcare is going up a pretty big swag, and we basically have to help cover that expense for employees. So I very much believe that we have to have that. As police commissioner, I did go through with my, as liaison of the police force, and did ask them if they like the 310, they drop into the 1%. Chief Todd and I have had real difficulty in keeping officers, and sometimes our hardest is the 10 to 12 years, so they actually fall into that. And we've made our adjustments really in regards to safety, fire, and police, and want to keep people at a competitive salary. And in many ways, I think we're just barely keeping there. In some ways, we do lose some officers to different areas in the community. So I've thought about that idea, but I'd say very firm on the 2% for all employees. I think we have to value them all for the good work they do. If you just knocked off it for the top third, you would knock off $90,000 off a $1.3 million adjustment. So you're not really getting bang for your buck by doing that. So I would just stay to that, and that's what you could send it out to the commissioners, but I just think it's a well thought out budget, and would strongly urge you to keep it as it is. Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. Kent, I'm not sure if this question would be for you or maybe to Commissioner Grinberg. Could you remind me what the legislature did, if anything, about budget carryovers or ending balances? Did they make any changes this last session for government subdivisions or not? I know I think they were talking about it.
Talking about it, I'm not aware of any legislative changes.
All they need.
Oh,
It didn't happen, and one last comment about the budget surplus a year ago when I was rather new, and Commissioner Grinberg was also new, but quite foresightful. You made a comment about preserving the ending balance and really hanging on to it, and I've come around to really appreciating that more and more and more, especially in these tight economic times. So I think there's an immense value to keeping that in place and not digging into it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Roll call. Roll call vote.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Mahoney?
Aye. Thank you. 45, bid award for Improvement District PR 117 or 17F1. Brenda Daring to explain.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Attached, you'll find a letter written by Thomas Knockmoose, our division engineer, in regards to the bid award for PR 17F1. We are recommending the award to Op Construction. Typically, you would see this on the consent. Unfortunately, due to a family emergency, we missed the noon deadline, and Kember was very gracious to get us on the regular agenda. And we do need this to keep moving forward so we can get that intersection reconstructed yet this fall, as before we know it, winter will be around the corner. And if you have
motion?
any questions, let me know.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Pepcorn second. Any discussion? Dave, you're okay with this?
Well, yeah, and if you want to just say real quickly, basically, the reason we always go with the lowest bid, there was extenuating circumstances where the lower bid didn't quite have the qualifications to do it, so that's basically the reason why.
Correct. Due to the traffic volumes and the sensitivity of the intersection, we did put some minimum qualifications in our SIBs, and they just did not meet those minimum qualifications.
So it'll be done this fall.
Yep.
Very good. Roll call vote, please.
Gehrig?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Grinberg?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item 18, concur with Traffic Technical Advisor Committee to continue work with the Kilbourne Group to develop a plan for temporary construction and parking impacts associated with Block 9 construction project and put the finishing touches on the developer's agreement. Jeremy Gordon to explain this complex problem.
Well, I don't know if it's very complex. I know Dave, Commissioner Pepcorn wanted to talk about it. I don't know if you want to start or if you, I can just give a recap of where we're at.
Sir, whatever you prefer, Jeremy, you're the man. Would you rather go first, or would you rather me go first?
Well, if I can pull
Go
it up
ahead.
here.
Or if you're pulling it up, mine won't take very long.
Okay.
My main thing is, this is a roundabout way to say, the commission, we approved this project May of 2016. Now it's August of 2017, halfway through. And to me, I don't see a lot going on. And to me, I called Eric about this because to me, this isn't an open-ended agreement by us. To me, I'd like to know when the end is, because I think what they need to do is come back to us. Because to me, we approved this a year ago, and I'm concerned about the money has changed. Lots of things have changed. And so I support the project, but I think we need to revisit it. And especially from the perspective of us, it should have been halfway done by now. That was the original concept in my mind. So it is it's a little bit off of Jeremy's topic, but I wanted to give you my opinion that, and maybe Eric, you can let us know. To me, it should be right now. They should have to come back. Is there a specific drop dead date where they have to? That's my question.
Yeah, initially, Commissioner Pepcorn, initially the development agreement, as you say, approved in May, contemplated sort of all the deal documents getting approved, and by early November actually was initially. Those deadlines have been extended with the City Commission's approval 4 separate times. So you have had input on those, and the most recent extension was to August 31st, the end of this month. I think the expectation is that the developer will be coming to you, I think, at the next meeting here, August 28th, I believe it is, and they will then be informing you as to sort of what the status of the project is, and my expectation is they'll ask for a continuation, another extension of that development agreement.
So I'm going to add my editorial comment, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to have a real hard time giving them any further extensions. This is almost getting to be ridiculous. It's May. We thought it was going to be last year, and so it's a great thing. But this was a commitment we made of our taxpayer money, but it was a year ago. Times have changed, and so that's going to be my perspective. And so.
So to address that, I've asked the developer to come to each one of your commissioners and explain what's going on, because it is a good question, how long it's taking this thing to get going. So I've asked them to actually meet with each individual commissioner and explain what's going on, not even before they even come back to the commission to explain. Because as Eric would know, there's some complexities into the negotiations and how this thing has been going forward. And I think in fairness to the commission, they do need an update.
Yep. Thank you. Jeremy?
I don't know if you want me to, want to hear this out or not. This is really brief. So the project is basically 3 different phases. So they basically close the sidewalk on 5th Street and on 3rd Avenue under the first phase, which they're building the parking ramp here. So when they do start, that'll be 11 months. And then when they go to phase 2, they'll reopen the 5th Street sidewalk. They may reopen something north of the parking ramp. But the only sidewalk that will be closed at that point will be on 3rd Avenue. 2nd Avenue will always be open, and the east side of Broadway will always be open. So that's under phase 2 when they're building the tower. And then phase 3 is when they're working on the plaza. And pretty much all the sidewalks will be open at that point, and then they'll be working on putting the parking back together. So it's really a 2.5-year project, 3-year project when they get started. This is just to show that they have been working with us, dealing with staff, to try to do the best they can. You know, when you spend $100 million on a new construction project, there are going to be some impacts, but they're really doing their best, putting their best foot forward to minimize these as best they can.
This is a lot better than we thought originally. Jeremy, I think you've done a really good progress of trying to keep streets open and to allow people downtown to have a little less disruption. Initially, it was to basically close many of these downs. So do we need a motion tonight on this?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think so. No. Just my own editorial comment, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Large projects take a lot of time. They're complex. Sanford Hospital took extra time because it got complex. I think the Fargo Dome took a little extra time because it got complex. So we need to keep in mind, too, being patient on what our commitment was. So.
Any other discussion on this? Is this the last thing?
That was it. No,
Well, we have balance change for change order number 5 on a decrease of 28,000 for improvement district VR with 16B1.
Yeah, this
A
is just,
decrease?
I can cover special assessments for this. Yeah, this is a final balancing change order for Broadway's project last year. This is, we want to get this approved tonight, that's why it's added today, so we can get it, we want to get this off of our, we want to bond for it, get it in the special assessment run, and the legal aspect of that starts next Monday. The advertisement in the forum and whatnot. So we'd like to have this project added to get $4 million off the carrying cost for $4 million.
Is there a motion?
What was the dollar total again?
28,000.
Yeah, so this usually would have come through you from PUPEC as a report of action. It would have been on the consent agenda. We just did not get it on this week. There was a miscommunication in our office about that. But yeah, so at the end of the day, we're filing the project. The final contract amount around $4 million.
So it's 4 million, you're knocking it down 28,000, so then you can send it out. Is that correct?
Correct.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
Oh, I just need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Decrease costs, guys.
Sidebar.
Any other discussion, all those, sorry, roll call vote, please.
Gary,
Yes.
Grinberg,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Any other business? Is there a motion? Oh,
Just a
Commissioner Strand?
question, Mayor. Well, item number 18 that was pulled from the consent to the regular agenda, there was an action requirement or request there to concur with the committee's
It
effort.
asked them to concur with working.
Do we need to act?
So
on
Jeremy, wouldn't we have to approve that? Do you concur to work?
Yes.
Make a motion.
that? Also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Grinberg.
Aye.
Gary,
Yes.
Pepcorn.
No.
Mahoney.
Aye. Now, is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Is there a second? We are adjourned.